Hello, BookTube. We're back with more of the 28 Days of Science Fiction. Today is a bit different. The last one we did was uh, magazines, and there's a holdover on this one. But now we're going to move into science fiction and film and some horror as well for the next shelf, and then the one a little bit after that as well. Now, I had already tried to film this shelf, and I realized I was up to almost an hour. So I'm going to split this one in two. So this is shelf 11A, the first half of it. And so we'll go through again, or for me, it's again, but this is a holdover from the magazine shelf. If you remember, I did say I had some indexes, but most of them are larger, so they're down on the bottom. But this one was not big enough to put at the bottom, so it just goes on the other shelf. This is Monthly Terrors, an index to the weird fantasy magazines published in the United States and Great Britain, compiled by Frank H. Parnell with the assistance of Mike Ashley, forward by Peter Hennig. We've already met Mike Ashley, and Peter Hennig is probably a familiar name to a lot of people. He's written on horror, film. Usually you see these sort of almost coffee table type books by him. Let's see, this is Greenwood Press again, published in 1985, and it's part of their bibliographies and indexes in world literature, and this is number 4. And it's exactly what it says. It is an index of each of the magazines. Like, you got a chronological listing of contents, and it's a huge list of magazines that it covers. Sorry, the light. I've been feeling. I don't know. I can't get the lamp to not sort of wash everything out in that corner, and I don't know why. It worked well one time when I accidentally just shoved it wherever it was. Now I can't get it back to where it was. But anyway, so I just have to keep that in mind. So yeah, so it goes through, as I say, each issue chronologically. Let me just find here the Mysterious Traveler magazine, and it just goes through every story and the issues. Very tiny print. It's a little difficult to read. It's almost like a dot matrix. And this was I picked this up used, but somewhere somehow in traveling and in moving, this has gotten stained with some tea or coffee. If it's coffee, I don't drink coffee, so I don't know how this happened. And it was sticking together. I don't know. The perils of moving. Things disappear, and hopefully I'll still find the books that I'm missing, but things disappear and get damaged when you move. It's a bit of a nightmare. Anyway, now let's move into the science fiction. Now, we got some movies here, specific studies of movies, a lot of collections of essays, film reviews, that type of thing. And we start out with Fritz Lang's Metropolis, a collection of essays. It's a cinematic visions of technology and fear, edited by Michael Minden and Holger Bachman. Published by Camden House in 2000. And it literally just goes through, the pre-production details and so forth. When I say, there are original sort of essays of the period when it was done, but also reviews. Like you've got here, Metropolis, Der Kinematograph. I say things in my head occasionally, or most of the time properly, but then the COVID just won't allow me to verbalize certain things at times. Anyway, that's from 1927. A lot of reviews from 1927. And then sort of critical studies of the film, and then how Metropolis is viewed now. It's a really, really good collection. As I say, there's going to be a lot of essays in this section, and I think that's why I've taken so long to do it. So we'll split it up. This is Technology and Culture, the Film Reader, edited by Andrew Utterson. And again, we've got Metropolis, the robot, on the cover. And this is Routledge Press, Taylor and Francis Group. And this is part of their In Focus Routledge Film Readers. It's a very short one, actually, but it's quite interesting. It's a number of essays, as I said, some older and some newer ones. And like I'm just looking here, one of the contexts and consequences section. There's Zig Vertov, Kinnock's A Revolution, and he that would have been an essay from probably the 30s or 40s. And there's a number here of older essays as well. We've got Origins and Evolution. Yeah, and it just goes into the definitions of determinism, projections, and aesthetics. It studies academic to a certain extent, but that's just but more general essays as well. But a lot of them are historical in context. We got Origins and Evolution examines the lineage of cinema's machines while challenging the received notion that the cinema began with a discrete moment of invention. So yeah, so it's quite interesting, actually. And it's not just science fiction as well. It's more about technology and how it affects culture as well. But it does talk about science fiction, so hence it's in this section, which it's a bit peripheral, but it fits in for the moment anyway. Now we go into a few books of a specific film. This is Invasions of the Body Snatchers, John Siegel, director, and edited by Al Lavallee. And this is published by Rutgers University Press in 1989, and it's basically it's a series of books, again put out by Rutgers, called Rutgers Films in Print. Now it's got the script, the entire script of the film, and then it goes into some reviews, as well as some production material, and then interviews. It's good for what it is. As I say, to get the script, that's kind of cool. Then we move on to another one that's not quite as good. It's interesting, but yeah, well, I'll explain. It's called Invasion of the Body Snatchers, a Tribute. It's essays by Stephen King, Dean Koontz, John Albreen, and more. Edited by Kevin McCarthy and Ed Gorman. Kevin McCarthy was the actor. It's got some interviews in there as well. Some of the essays aren't the best, but the interviews are quite interesting. This is a poorly printed thing. It's printed by Amazon. Starkhouse, they've done a lot of stuff and a lot of interesting stuff. I think it's part of a series of theirs, isn't it? Well, it just, it doesn't say series, but it was published in 2006. And as I say, it's a collection of essays, but it's just poorly printed. Like, you just look at that. You see the way it's cut off at the top. That's Amazon for you. This one, I think, is, along with the first one, are the best too. This is Bear Manor Media publishers, and it's Invasion of the Body Snatchers, The Making of a Classic by Mark Thomas McGee. It's not essays as such, but he does go through and talk about where the story came from, the novel, um, the special effects, the production of it, and then what critics have thought of it, and goes through the remakes as well, and the the reproduction of pictures in here is pretty good. There's Dana Winter, um, and yeah, it's this I really like this one. This is print on demand, but it's not printed by Amazon, so it's a lot better. It's printed by Lightning Source. Now we go to TV with The Twilight Zone, the late 1950s anthology series. Not all science fiction, some science fiction, weird, horror. Just a whole slew of different stories. But this is the Twilight Zone Companion, third edition, by Mark Scott Zickery. It's got French flaps, which I had forgotten until I picked it up just a little while ago. And this was published originally in 1982, second edition 89, and then the third edition in 2018. I don't think there is another edition at this point, but it's Silman James Press out of Los Angeles. Now, he does a really good job here. He goes through every episode, and he prefaces it sort of with all the filmographical material, if that's a word, all the actors and so forth in it, and then he goes, then he gives a description of the episode, and then other critical material or the production, the actors, any other information that's interesting, and it goes like it's fairly substantial. It's several pages with pictures. There's Billy Mumy in the episode. It's a Good Life. And yeah, it's pretty good. I picked this up specifically because I wanted to get in Blu-ray the complete series. Now, there was a special edition or limited edition set that had a booklet by that author, and I love booklets in Blu-rays or even DVDs, but Blu-rays. And there was, I believe, sort of the reprints and there was miniature sort of comics, and I think some cards and maybe a few other things. But it was really, really expensive. It was like 150 or 100 some pounds. And I couldn't justify it. And I looked around, as I do sometimes, and I go, okay, well, there's a booklet in there, but the booklet is limited. So then I found this book by the same author, and I'm going, well, this is much more substantial. It's a large book, and it's over 400 pages. It's 500 pages with the index. So I figured, well, yeah, I'll get this. And because the vanilla set of Blu-rays was a fraction of the price, I think I got it for like 25 or 30 pounds as opposed to 100 and some, and this was on sale for about 15 pounds or something, but it wound up being dinged and damaged through Amazon, so they gave it to me for a lot less. So yeah, I figured I was way out ahead of the game here. Let's see here. Now we continue with TV, with a book that was given to me as a present. I think it was Christmas or a birthday present a long time ago. Probably when it was published, and can't remember the date off the top of my head, but we'll find out in a minute. It's Doctor Who, The Writer's Tale, The Untold Story of the BBC Series by Russell T. Davies and Benjamin Cook. And this is a limited edition by BBC Books. It's got a foreword by Philip Pullman. And it's a naked hardcover. Gets a little dusty. Interesting end papers, black and white. Is the back the same? Yeah, the back is the same. And as I say, it's a limited edition. And it was published in 2008. So that's probably when it was. But this is kind of neat. It's signed by Russell T Davies and what's his name? The second author here, Benjamin Cook. At least I assume that's Benjamin Cook. The Russell T Davies, I think, is the top one, and this is limited to 1,000 copies, and this is number 162. And it goes through sort of, it's got production notes in it, little changes in the script for each episode. I haven't really looked at this too much, but it's a neat. See, it's got the colored there, but it's colored little bits on the edges, which I thought was kind of neat. It's glossy paper. It's got really good reproduction of photos in it. So yeah, so Doctor Who. And we're not quite finished with Doctor Who yet, but let's get this back in the slipcase. And the last thing for Doctor Who that I have is, I can't read that on the cover there, but it's The Unsilent Library. Essays on the Russell T Davies era of the new Doctor Who, edited by Simon Bradshaw, Anthony Keane, and Graham Slate, with a foreword by Robert Shearman. It's a slim little book of essays, but it's got an essay by the introduction by all three editors, Graham Slate, Paul Hawkins, Catherine Cooker, James Rose. I don't know these names at all. Now, it's part of the Science Fiction Foundation, has put out Foundation Studies in Science Fiction. Now, the very first one is one I'd love to get, which I'd mentioned it before. It's called The Parliament of Dreams, Conferring on Babylon 5. That's long out of print, and I think the last time I looked for it about 5 or 6 years ago, it was over £100. There's also on Terry Pratchett, Christopher Priest, we have seen, I believe, and I've got one other one, I think, that we did see, the Parietal Games, Critical Writings by and on M. John Harrison. So so it's an interesting little collection. Just covering his era of Doctor Who. Now back to the movies. Oh, I need some glue on that. One of, dozens of books. Space Odyssey, Stanley Kubrick, Arthur C. Clarke, and the Making of a Masterpiece by Michael Benson. It's about 2010, A Space Odyssey. And this is Simon & Schuster, published 2018. And it just goes through the production, the writing of it, pre-production, and so forth of the book. I used this when I did my book-to-film version, sort of 2010. When I say sort of, because is it really book to film? Well, that's the question. And it's got really nice colored reproductions, and you got Leonard Rossiter there, which is kind of interesting to see him in the film. But there we go. Now we go to reviews of films, and this is the next library copy, and it's in really rough condition, but it's been withdrawn from BBC stock. This is Variety, complete science fiction reviews from Variety, and this was published, or at least up until the date, 1985, by Garland Publishing. And it does literally do what it says. It's just a reproduction of the reviews, but it's like a photocopy reproduction in 3 columns on each page. But it starts right out in 1907, I think it is. 1907 to 1919 is the first section. And then we definitely have Metropolis in here. It's just really, really cool. I've sat here a lot with many hours going through this, but as I say, it's a little rough. The covers are coming off, not coming off, but they're peeling back, and I've got to try to take care of it more than I have done. Okay, now we look at science fiction serials by Roy Kennard. He was a popular writer. He's written a lot of material on horror, science fiction, lots of stuff. And this is McFarlane when before they were sold to, I think it was Taylor and Francis. So they were just very plain hardcovers. Now they put out more slicker books and paperbacks. We'll see some in the future. Yeah, this is just goes through, as it says here, a critical filmography of 31 hard SF cliffhangers with an appendix of 37 serials with slight SF content. And published 1998. And we've got Flash Gordon there, Buster Crabbe, and Gene Rogers. And it just, it goes through, as I say, it's a critical study, filmography, and the production, a little bit of production material. Here we've got The Phantom Creeps by Bela Lugosi, or not by, but with Bela Lugosi, and we've got Captain Video, which was a TV series in the 50s, I believe, as well. But excuse me, the serials were broken down, or not broken down, but combined into films occasionally as well. Those are more readily available, but it's really interesting to see them as serials. And I've seen probably a good third to a half of those, so that's really kind of cool. Now we go another McFarlane. Vintage science fiction films, 1896 to 1949 by Michael Benson. And this was published, McFarlane, as I say, 1985. And it just goes through a sort of chronological view of everything, and it goes through silent, sound, serials, and the filmography and bibliography. And here we go, from Fritz Lang's Metropolis, Bridget Helm. So it has production stills, and like I say, that filmography of all the films. So at the back, it's got a listing of all the films and just a brief description, like, black and white, 1937, the production company, the director, the cast, and so forth. Now, as I mentioned, the McFarlane are doing more slicker ones now, at least in paperback. So here we go, Fantastic Cinema, Fantastic Cinema Subject Guide to 2 volumes by Brian Sennen and John Johnson. It's a topical index of 2,500 horror, science fiction, and fantasy films. And this was published, as I say, by McFarlane. This was done in 1992. I'm not sure if there was a hardcover of this or not, but this is obviously softcover paperback, and it just goes through like every not every book, but not book. Film, but it's subject matter. Like, for instance, you want apes and monkeys, Atlantis, the atomic bomb, automobiles. There's even a section on Edgar Allan Poe, listing all the films, and it is in double column, small material. But here's vampires, and it goes through just a listing and a sometimes very brief description of the film, as you can see there, very brief, and then sometimes a little longer. Now, the next one is a great book. I've used it a lot. And I'd love to get the hardcovers of it, or at least the new hardcover of it, but it's probably a print on demand. McFarland Press put this out. It's Keep Watching the Skies by Bill Warren. And it was originally published in 2 volumes in 1982 and 1986. And they don't actually give me a date for this combined 2 volumes in paperback. So I'm assuming around 1986 or after. Now, he goes through year by year every science fiction film. And then he gives a brief description of it with, actors and so forth. Sometimes it's a little bigger than others, and he gives his sort of critical material or critical what he thinks it's about, or no, sorry, this might not have been the greatest time to do that video, because my long COVID brain fog is kicked in quite a bit in the last couple days. But anyway, he does do like Conquest of Space, and he writes an essay on each one, and he gives his critical assessment. That's the word I was thinking of. For this, and there is a newer edition of this as well, which I'd love to get in. Many of you will probably know that this is Keep Watching the Skies, from the, if not the very last line from The Thing from Another World, 1950 or 51, from the Who Goes There, John W. Campbell story, a loose adaptation of it. But there's the author there with, Robbie the Robot, originally showing up in Forbidden Planet, and then was on the series Lost in Space. Now we go to radio. The only book that I do have about radio science fiction. Now, this wasn't quite as what I was expecting when I bought this, but it was extremely cheap. It's X-1, Radio's Greatest Science Fiction Series by Michael Sammerdyk. Now, this is self-published, as you can tell. It just, bad design, but that's typical Amazon crappy design. And you can see even the formatting's not the greatest, but it does give an overview of each episode with the actors, with directors and so forth, as much as he has been able to glean. As I say, this was self-published in 2021. So I've kept it because it's the only thing that I have as a reference for X-1. Now, we'll do, this is the last one, I think. Yeah, because we're at 30 minutes here, pretty well. Mad, Bad, and Dangerous, The Scientist and the Cinema by Christopher Fraley. This is really cool. I like Christopher Fraley. This is Real Reektion. I don't know how to pronounce that. Books. Published in 2005. And it just goes through, all the sort of mad scientists in films. Scarecrow's brain, because of A Wizard of Oz. And he just goes through and describes with, it's fairly well illustrated. But yeah, so there you go. I'll end it there. This was so part A of shelf number, is it 12 or on 12? Yeah, shelf number 12. I might have said 11 at the beginning, but this is shelf number 12. Thank you, BookTube.